I don't really focus on the University of Akron during this presentation. This is really a presentation that can be applicable to any college that these families are looking at. Of course, I always relate it back to UA. However, it's not the main focus. So when I'm explaining how to confirm your enrollment, we call it a confirmation fee here at the University of Akron, but a lot of schools call it a deposit. And I make sure that families are aware that those are the exact same thing, even though we call it something different. Or that at UA, we call ourselves admissions officers because we all have different titles, but other schools may refer to them as admissions representatives or admissions counselors and things like that.
Welcome to Mission Admissions, a podcast that helps higher ed become better recruiters, communicators, marketers, and leaders. I'm your host, Jeremy Tiers, and every other week I'll share my candid conversations with industry leaders and difference makers from both inside and outside of higher ed. You'll walk away with advice, tips, and strategies to help you both professionally and personally. Mission Admissions is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. You can learn more at element451.com. Hey, everybody. It's Jeremy Tiers, and this is episode 64 of the Mission Admissions podcast. Differentiating your campus visit experiences and making your content feel personalized and relevant has never been more important. So I'm excited to welcome McKenzie Sullivan from the University of Akron to the show today. The Zips have designed two super helpful presentations at different points during the year, specifically for first-generation students and their families. The number of first-gen students, I'm sure as many of you listening know, continues to grow and is expected to continue to rise significantly in the U.S. over the next couple of years. And at Akron, 57% of their student body is actually first-gens as well. So thanks for joining me today, McKenzie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
As you and I were jumping on there and you were telling me, hey, we've got one of these events tomorrow. If memory serves me correctly, some of what we're going to talk about today, right, you're going to be doing tomorrow. And so you've got these, we'll call it College 101 and College 102, as you refer to it, sessions, specifically for first gens and their families. And 101 kind of covers the basics of the admissions process, like navigating the college search. And you offer those a lot of times, right? Summer, fall, open houses. And then 102, which has been taking place during your admitted student events, including the one coming up tomorrow, kind of covers more of the financial aid side of things, like how to read and understand your offer letter, making your college decision, and all these other like action items, right, that students have to do when the process comes to an end. You were totally instrumental in creating and pushing for all of this content to be added at these different points in the cycle. So like, help us understand what really drove you, McKenzie, to want to do specific events for first gens as part of Akron's event programming.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I'm first generation myself. So that has really led to my big push, and my true reason to be in admissions is to help families that are also in the same shoes that me and my family were in a number of years ago. So when it came to coming up with these sessions, it was really something that I always really wanted to do, just didn't know how it was really to best execute it, when it would be appropriate to do so. So really, when it came to coming up with these, it was kind of like a threefold design, if you will. So there were a few different moving pieces to what ultimately led to this. We, as a whole, just in the office, having general conversations with each other, it was information that I had been sharing with my colleagues, things that I said, hey, like as a person who was a first generation student, XYZ doesn't make sense. We should maybe look into changing how we do this, or maybe making sure that we're layering in some sort of explanation to why it is that we're doing what we're doing. And between those conversations, the wheels kind of started to turn, if you will. And we actually had one of our staff members attend the CIVSA conference last summer. It's the Collegiate Information and Visitor Services Association, if you will. And when she attended that conference, she was in a few of the different sessions, including one about first gen. So her wheels started turning. And then also her and another colleague in our office are a part of a first gen initiatives committee for the university as a whole. So as we were all kind of thinking of different ideas, we decided to actually revamp all of our campus visit programming. And College 101 sort of became this session that we had talked about adding to the event and just kind of ran with it.
And so to be clear, McKenzie is actually an admissions counselor. She's not the person, just so everybody listening understands, who necessarily is responsible for the daily execution of like visits and events. This happens to be an additional thing that McKenzie has taken on. So, all right, you have these ideas. I continue to find McKenzie as I'm working with college campuses and having conversations with lots of, admissions counselors all the way up to senior leaders. The execution, right, is a lot of times where people get stuck. And you kind of alluded to it earlier. So help us understand, as you were talking through the ideas with your colleagues, where did you kind of find yourself running into, I'll say, roadblocks or speed bumps? Or was there really anything where you're just like, gosh, I don't know if we should do this, or this, maybe we're taking on too much, or just like help us understand how you were able to stay focused and ultimately execute this at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was one of those things where everybody was on board with it. And being first gen in the office, I was the one who really, took this on. And I was worried it was going to be a lot to really execute and figure out exactly how I wanted to design it. I really didn't have like a true plan in mind when we first started talking about including this presentation. So as I was talking with others in the office, it was really a collaborative effort at first to really formulate the idea of here's what I'm thinking. Does this sound right? Does this sound interesting? What have you? So me and another colleague dove into some websites and really were trying to find what schools are already doing first gen programming and what can we take from them and add to our own program. So we spent some time digging into the different jargon, the things that we use in our day-to-day as admissions counselors that families may not really know. So we took the time, looked through those websites, got a good idea of what some other schools were doing, and then added in things that we also felt were important. So these terms range from everything from the college search process to what's an admitted student and things that we kind of take for granted as general terms that we think everybody knows because we live in it every single day. So as we were going through those terms, we really picked the ones that seemed most relevant. So this is all just speaking to College 101 at this point. College 102 had not yet come up. So focusing on those terms within the college search, different degree types, majors, things like that. We just collected all these terms and ended up with a solid list of about 45 terms that we then put together in a glossary. So we have a handout that we provide to every single student family as they are walking through the door. So they have those list of terms. From there, we knew that we could not possibly get through 45 terms in a 20-minute presentation. So then we kind of weeded down what we thought were the most important ones to cover. So with that, again, that collaborative effort within the office, we really came up with the ones that were most important. So we started the presentation with what is first gen? A lot of first gen students don't even know that they're first gen because, again, it's another jargon that we use in our day-to-day lives. So we explain first gen, who they are. We explain that Akron has 57% first gen students within the student body. And then we go through each kind of portion. So this is starting with junior. So we start these with our junior open houses. And we're explaining the college search, what they need to do, what they can do to best prepare themselves. We tell them they are considered prospective students, and we define what a prospective student is and go from there into the admissions process, the application, where to find them, what the Common App is. A lot of students don't know what the Common App even is in their junior year. A lot of high schools are covering that information, but they're waiting until senior year to do so, maybe in, September during those senior meetings. So we're just making sure they have that information. And then we go over what the different decisions mean, and then going into a little bit of financial aid. Nothing crazy, really just what is the FAFSA and what does a financial aid offer? So as we were going through all of this, we weren't really sure how families would receive the information, if it was too much, if it wasn't enough. So that was one of the challenges that I had going into it. Was I didn't want to assume that anybody didn't know the information that I thought that they needed to know, or, what have you. So that was one of the challenges there. It was really well received from that very first presentation. And I think going in knowing if, we decided that this presentation just really wasn't cutting it, we needed to fix it, or we just needed to scrap it all together, that, we could. But luckily that really wasn't the case. We were able to really, move on and do big things with the presentation.
And so it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, you obviously had this, we'll call it framework initially before you presented that first College 101 session, which again just happened this past fall for the first time. Senior leadership did take a lot of convincing, I'm assuming, then for them to say, yeah, like, let's make this a part of what we're going to do this fall.
Yeah, honestly, our senior leadership here at the University of Akron in our admissions office is the best. I am truly very fortunate that truly when any of us in the office have ideas or something that we want to change or add, we are not really met with much pushback. We're really, given the opportunity to run with these ideas. And so it really wasn't anything difficult to do. And we were already revamping our events. So it kind of helped that it was in addition to something that we were already doing.
All right. So McKenzie, 20 minutes you said was the presentation. Help me understand, how did you say, all right, I know I have to make this presentation, engaging or interactive or something that, again, does not feel like I am just a talking head the entire time. Like, talk us through all of that and just what you learned maybe after doing the first one.
Absolutely. So my background, my undergraduate degree is actually in education. So when it comes to speaking to large groups, that's something that I've been doing for a number of years, maybe not necessarily at the scale that I've been doing these presentations, but just making sure that the students and families feel that they are comprehending what I am saying. So I usually stop pretty frequently during my presentations and do knowledge checks. Like, if you understand what I just said, or are we comprehending what's going on, or, however I want to phrase it in that moment, I just ask them to give me a thumbs up. And people are really receptive to making sure that, they're doing those things, that I'm aware that they are understanding what I am explaining. I also break up these presentations into sections and stop after each section and ask questions. So I ask them, are you understanding? Is there anything that I may be left out that you're wondering about? And sometimes I get a question or two after each section. Sometimes I get no questions at all. And that can be a scary thing as a presenter. Did I just overwhelm these people and they have no idea what I'm talking about? Or am I doing this correctly? And it's really one or the other. So I also just make sure that they know that they can stop me, they can ask these questions. And then I always reiterate, if there's anything that they want to know more about, I will hang out at the end and they can come ask me one-on-one. And I usually have a lot of families take me up on that. I usually have like a little bit of a line that forms, and I make sure that their individual questions are heard. And if it's something that I don't have the answer to, maybe it's something that I can refer to them to like a different department, I will. That's kind of the beauty in doing these during our visit days, is that we have full campus buy-in during our campus events. So we have all departments represented in some fashion. So if I don't have the answer, or if I know somebody's more of an expert on something that they're curious about, I will make sure that they get directed to that person later on. We do like a fair style portion of our event where all of the different majors, clubs, organizations, things like that are tabling. So that's been another way to make sure that families are getting their questions answered. They're not leaving thinking that, somebody just word vomited at them. They're actually, taking the time to make sure that they're being redirected, if you will.
Anything really surprising after the first session when you debriefed either yourself or just with your colleagues where you were like, okay, good or bad, right? Wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, honestly, I've been very, very fortunate that the feedback has been extremely positive. So we have shifted a few things. So we've been doing these different styles of events for the past year. So tomorrow actually rounds out a full year of our like altered programming, if you will. So we at first were doing paper evaluations. So families had an evaluation they could fill out, they could leave feedback, and across the board, everything was really positive. Families were very happy that they attended the session, whether they were truly, first gen students and families, or maybe they were a traditional student, but this is the first child they have going to college. It's been a while since the parent has been in college. So that feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. We actually also shifted our campus events over into an app. So we have an app that our families now use to navigate our events, and they're able to leave that feedback within the app. So feedback from families has been super popular, or super positive rather. And then also all of my colleagues have been very supportive of it. They think everything that's been going on is, really awesome. They really have been taking the time to make sure that people on campus know that we're doing this. So another, kind of surprising thing that I wasn't expecting recently, but I was super excited to hear was that actually the College 101, College 102, some of the other event things that we've been doing as related to first gen were highlighted in one of our board meetings recently. So there's just been so much positivity around it that truly I didn't expect. I just thought, this is a presentation, something I'm passionate about. I'm sure it's going to be a value add. I just didn't really expect how positive it would be received. Also at events, families stop me. They will see me like walking past them, as I'm going to my next task for the day. And they'll say, hey, thank you so much for that presentation. That's something super unique. We haven't had that experience yet. And it was just really refreshing to know that the University of Akron is, adding in this layer to help families. Another important thing that I have not added yet about College 101 is that I don't really focus on the University of Akron during this presentation. This is really a presentation that can be applicable to any college that these families are looking at. Of course, I always relate it back to UA. However, it's not the main focus. So when I'm explaining how to confirm your enrollment, we call it a confirmation fee here at the University of Akron, but a lot of schools call it a deposit. And I make sure that families are aware that those are the exact same thing, even though we call it something different. Or that at UA, we call ourselves admissions officers because we all have different titles, but other schools may refer to them as admissions representatives or admissions counselors and things like that.
Just like I did earlier when I called you an admissions counselor. See,
Yes.
higher ed has tons and tons of titles, I feel like, for everything. And so, it's a great reminder for everybody listening that at the end of the day, I get asked all the time, McKenzie, I'll be leading a training workshop and we'll be talking about like fall travel, for example. And somebody will say, so Jeremy, how do I make like my high school visit or my college fare better? And I'm like, okay, just trust me on this. Don't talk about your school at all. And they're like, what? They're like, but I have to. And I'm like, hear me out. And it's just this idea of nobody wants to be word vomited at, especially when they just meet somebody for the first time. It's not that you can't talk about your school, but like, what can you help them with, right? To be able to build that trust to then organically stuff starts to come up, or they ask a follow-up question in the setting that you talked about earlier, and you're able maybe to hit on a resource that Akron has or something like that. And it doesn't feel like a sales pitch of any kind because all you're doing is answering their question, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's been one of kind of my favorite parts of the presentation is really just making people feel that they are leaving with something. And even if they don't choose UA, at least they can look back and say, hey, my visit to UA was great. We got a lot of information that was extremely helpful. And though I didn't pick them, I'm okay with that because I had that wonderful positive experience with them. And I would recommend them to somebody else that's looking.
Yeah. Word of mouth will always be king or queen until you and I are long gone. All right. So
Yes.
102, you're doing it as we talked about tomorrow. You've done it already. My first thought, right, when I saw this was, all right, financial aid's not easy to talk about. It's not fun to talk about. It's not, I would argue, for a lot of families, comfortable when it comes to talking about money to talk about finances. How did you shape the content, especially the financial aid portion of 102 in a way that not only was helpful, but like relatable as well to obviously the attendees?
Absolutely. So I typically start that section off with saying, I'm not a financial aid expert, but here is what I know. Here's what I can share with you in terms of thinking of the different parts of the financial aid offer letter. So we go over what an offer letter is. Again, it's going to be called an offer letter here. It might be called an award letter at the other school you're looking at, but essentially it's all the same thing. I really break it down to explaining to families a few different parts. So scholarships, what they are, you don't pay them back. Grants, what they are, you also don't pay back grants. Loans, what those are, you do have to pay those back. And really just breaking it down in those little bite-sized chunks. The other thing I do like to focus on during that portion of the presentation is going over what direct costs and what indirect costs are. That's been definitely one of the more challenging portions to the offer letter I've found with talking with families, and just making sure they know direct costs are what you owe us, indirect costs are what you should budget for just in case. And truly, that is how I explain it. I try to keep it as simple as possible. And then I let them know while I'm explaining all these things that we have our financial aid folks here at the event, and they can, make sure that they stop down to them and ask any more specific questions about their financial aid offer. They can pull up their financial aid offer, should they have been sent out by then, which we were able to get ours out fairly early, which we were excited about. So we were able to have those families have those direct conversations pretty quickly. Really, I just remind them that I'm giving them the tools in order to have that conversation with our financial aid office and have a little bit of a background, a little bit more knowledge as to what questions they can ask and what information they need to know in order to make a sound financial decision.
What else besides financial aid have you found during College 102, especially, to be most helpful from a content? Oh, people seem to really be paying that much more attention, or again, similar to 101, when they come up afterwards and ask you questions, this topic or something seems to come up a lot.
So a lot of it is around the next steps that students have to do, either as an admitted student or as a confirmed student. So that is really the second half of College 102, is going over what's orientation, why do you need to attend, who an advisor is, and why you need to meet with them. Again, things that we think in our day-to-day are, well, of course you do this and then that, but the families don't necessarily know that. I always like to kind of, to put it in perspective, students who are in high school right now, they have their school counselors. Their school counselors do so many things for them. They help them through the college admissions process. They help them with scheduling their classes. They help them, with their problems in life or at school. So a lot of families, they come to campus, they see, oh, McKenzie's an admissions counselor. She must help me through this process, schedule my classes, be able to help me with anything that I have. And of course, I'm always willing to help them get those questions answered, but then also letting them know that there are a lot of different people that they can connect with to get those different things accomplished. So making sure that they know that once they're done with the college admissions process, they will then move to advising. They will then move to our new student and first year programming office, so they can do orientation and welcome weekend and all of those things. So a lot of it is really just families not being sure what they're supposed to do once they decide to attend a school. So just making sure that they have those tools, those resources, they know where to go, they have found incredibly helpful. So even if their question is, okay, now what? I can tell them what to expect next, get them connected to that person, and even just getting them connected has been extremely helpful for them.
I would also love to pick your brain as a young admissions representative, and I have this conversation a lot with your peers, McKenzie. Yes, a lot of newer staff, I'll say, both in age or experience, want to take on additional responsibilities in a role, right? And so for you, you're involved with the Ohio ACAC, right? And fun fact I learned about you, you're actually an adjunct faculty member as well, teaching student success, right, in the College of Business there. And oh, by the way, you have a day job, right? And oh, by the way, you just created these two new events that we just covered. What's the balance, McKenzie, and how are you balancing, if you're comfortable sharing? Are there certain things or strategies that are good for you? This desire to, cool, I want to grow professionally, but I also have to understand I'm one person and I have to know my limits. Otherwise, like, I'm going to be doing a bunch of things, but maybe not doing them well, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think really when it comes down to it, just remembering growth takes time. I think a lot of us coming from higher ed, I know I was the student in college where Not only did I have my major in student teaching, I took on an internship with the admissions office, and I was in a sorority, and I was a student ambassador, and I did all of these things. And I think there's a little bit of a difficulty of transitioning from doing so much as a college student to wanting to keep doing that much as a professional. And truly, it's just not sustainable. So really, I would encourage folks to don't do things so quickly. Master the things in front of you. If you have a territory that you're supposed to manage, and maybe you have one other special project. For example, for me, when I started at the University of Akron, and something I'm still doing, is I manage our group visits. So different community-based organizations and schools, when they want to bring their students to the university, they're working with me. I'm providing that presentation. I'm making sure they're getting out on tour, coordinating lunch, whatever it is that they want to do. So knowing that now, mind you, I have a little bit of a smaller territory because I am more of an on-campus role because of the group visit piece. I really focused on just making sure I was doing the group visits to the best of my ability before I started taking on all these other things. I'm very fortunate that in my office, when we have something that we want to explore, we can ask. And if there's an ability to put us on that task, we will be allowed to, but it's always followed up with, is there anything that you want to take off? So great, you want to do this presentation. I also know that you are supervising a club. Is that now too much for you? Do you want to give up one of those things, or do you feel strongly that you can continue doing those? And this isn't, I didn't start here at the university and take on all of these things on day one. It's truly been each semester I've been adding a little bit more in order to make sure that my cup is filled and that I'm doing the things that are keeping me in this career that I love and this career that I want to be doing for a long time. So just making sure that, you're having those conversations with your supervisor of being able to take on what you feel you can, but also knowing that you don't have to say yes to every single thing that gets thrown your way. Take on what you can. We work for a very long time of our lives. We're in this for 25, 30, however many years. You don't need to become a VP overnight.
All right, McKenzie, I end every show with something called Fun Rapid Fire. So I'm going to give you a handful of things, and I just want to get some quick feedback from you on each, okay?
Okay.
All right. So I heard you got married last November. So what's the most adventurous activity you and your husband have done together?
Oh, that's a great question. We're really into traveling. So we have gone out of the country a couple times. We went to the Dominican Republic for our honeymoon. We recently went to Mexico with friends. So I would say that's definitely the most adventurous we've been doing, is just making sure that we're doing as much traveling as possible.
Favorite Taylor Swift song? What is it?
Oh, that's a really hard one for me. I'm a big Swiftie. I would say New Year's Day off the Reputation album.
Who will the Cleveland Browns draft with the number 2 pick here in a couple of weeks?
I don't know. Kind of biased. My brother-in-law is actually eligible this year. So I would hope he gets picked up by the Browns. So I'm able to, have some easy home games to attend.
You're a Baldwin Wallace grad. Bigger rival, Mount Union or John Carroll?
Mount Union.
Just because they win football all the time?
Yes. And we would have to play them like around homecoming or like community day. And it was just never good when it lined up that way.
All right, last one. The most challenging part of teaching college students who are only a handful of years younger than you is?
Really making sure that they don't know that they're only a few years younger than me, trying to maybe be a little bit wiser beyond my years.
I appreciate you sharing that. And, I think a lot of people are going to be able to take things away today from what you shared about the cool stuff you're doing at University of Akron. What's the best way to get a hold of you, McKenzie, if anybody wants to follow up with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, McKenzie Sullivan. Also, my email, University of Akron, mcc74@uakron.edu.
Awesome. I really appreciate you joining me, McKenzie, and look forward to the next time we connect.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Mission Admissions is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a number of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admission professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Day Cabilds, and so many other amazing leaders in the higher ed space. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create more meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. You can learn more at element451.com.